I join the Prime Minister in offering condolences to all those who died in the horrific attack fuelled by hate in Quebec, and I think we should send our solidarity to everyone in Canada on this sad occasion. Mr. Speaker, may I also associate myself with the Prime Minister's tribute to the former member for West Lothian and later Linlithgow, Tam Dalyell. A Labour MP, former Father of the House, he doggedly fought to expose official wrongdoing and cover-ups from the miners' strike to Iraq. I'm sure that the Prime Minister would agree with me that Tam's scrutiny and contributions made this House a better place. And can I recommend to all members his autobiography, The Importance of Being Awkward? And I'm quite happy, Mr. Speaker, to offer my copy to the Secretary of State for Brexit to have a good read of it. I'm sure he's probably already read it. Mr. Speaker, at last week's Prime Minister's question time, the Prime Minister told the House, "I'm not afraid to speak frankly to the President of the United States." What happened?
Well, first of all, can I say,
behold, unelected leader,
to the right honourable gentleman that I wasn't aware of the book that he's referred to by Tam Dalyell, The Importance of Being Awkward, but I suspect, given the number of resignations he's had from his front bench, that some of his colleagues have indeed read that book. I'm happy to say to the right honourable gentleman that when I visited the United States, I'm pleased to say that I was able to build on the relationship we have with our most important ally and to get some very significant commitments from President Trump. And crucial among those was a 100% commitment to NATO. NATO which keeps us safe and keeps Europe safe too.
Yes, she flat out lies. Trump is not committed to NATO at all. He said this in a recent interview, and you can't trust anything that buffoon says.
Corbyn! Mr. Speaker, Downing Street has not denied that the Prime Minister was told by the White House that the executive order on travel to the US was imminent. So let's be clear, was the Prime Minister told about the ban during her visit, and did she try to persuade President Trump otherwise?
First of all, on the policy that President Trump has introduced, this government is clear that that policy is wrong. We wouldn't do it. In 6 years as Home Secretary, I never introduced such a policy. We believe it is divisive and wrong.
So, unelected leader, rather than signing up to Trump, you wag your finger at him. How hilarious.
If he's asking me whether I had advance notice of the ban on refugees, the answer is no. If he's asking me if I had advance notice that the executive order could affect British citizens, the answer is no. If he's asking if I had advance notice of the travel restrictions, the answer is we all did, because President Trump said he was going to do this in his election campaign. The question is how you respond. The job of government is not to chase the headlines. The job of government...
Don't you think she looks tired?
The job of government is not to take to the streets in protest. The job of government is to protect the interests of British citizens, and that's exactly what we did.
Mr. Speaker, on the day after the executive order was made to ban refugees and visitors from 7 predominantly Muslim countries, why did she 3 times refuse to condemn the ban then?
I've made very clear that we believe that this policy is divisive and wrong, that it is not a policy that we would introduce, and I've also made very clear when asked about this that this government has a very different approach to these issues.
You know, just dropping bombs on innocent people, creating a refugee problem in the first place.
On refugees, this government has a proud record of the support that we have given to refugees, and long may it continue.
Yes, may the United Kingdom continue to bomb people alongside Uncle Sam. creating the refugee problem in the first place.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said the United States is responsible for United States policy on refugees. But surely it is the responsibility of all of us to defend the 1951 Refugee Convention, which commits this country, the United States, and 142 other states to accept refugees without regard to their race, religion, or country of origin. President Trump has breached that convention. Why didn't she speak out?
First of all, I've made absolutely clear what the government's view on this policy is. Secondly, as I've just said, this government has a proud record, and this country has a proud record,
Invading Iraq.
of how it welcomes refugees.
By bombing them in the first place, creating the refugee problem.
We have, over the recent years,
Bombed Libya, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Oh boy, it's a bomb fest.
we've introduced the very particular scheme
Of creating bombs for kids.
to ensure that particularly vulnerable refugees in Syria can
Continue to be bombed just as Saudi Arabia can run a pipeline towards Europe. Ha ha ha.
be brought to this country.
Right after we bomb their homes so that the Saudis can run a pipeline to Europe.
And something like 10,000 Syrian refugees
Were created in the first place. Don't you have no shame directly because of the actions you take? Bombing their countries for fucking oil.
have come to this country since the conflict.
Again, and you bombed. Don't you have no shame? How do you sleep at night?
Began. We're also the second biggest bilateral donor, helping and supporting refugees in the region.
Right after your country destroyed their fucking countries, right after you invaded Iraq, just so you can have fucking cheap oil.
That is what we are doing. I have said that the policy is wrong. We will take a different view, and we will continue to welcome refugees to this country.
After creating the problem in the first place. Is it so hard for people like this to understand? They're creating the fucking refugee problem. That's what no one's talking about. Why are there fucking refugees? Because you're creating the problem by bombing their fucking countries.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, I also wrote to the Prime Minister on this issue, and I received her reply this morning. I hold in my hand her piece of paper. She makes no mention of the Refugee Convention nor condemns the US actions. Mr. Speaker, last week I also asked the Prime Minister to assure the House that in any United States trade deal she would not offer up our National Health Service as a bargaining chip. She gave no answer. When asked in the US, she also refused to rule it out. So let's ask her a third time. Will she rule out opening up our National Health Service to private US healthcare companies? Yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, I could give a detailed answer to the right honourable gentleman's question, but I think a simple and straightforward reply is what is required. The NHS is not for sale, and it never will be.
Unelected leader continues to tell lies to the British people. I'm not surprised. She loves Trump, who was also unelected.
I hope, Mr. Speaker, that includes not having US healthcare companies coming in to run any part of our National Health Service. Mr. Speaker, President Trump has torn up international agreements on refugees. He's threatened to dump international agreements on climate change. He's praised the use of torture. He's incited hatred against Muslims. He's directly attacked women's rights. Just what more does the President Trump have to do before the Prime Minister will listen to the 1.8 million people who've already called for his state visit invitation to be withdrawn?
The right honourable gentleman's foreign policy is to object to and insult the democratically elected head of state.
He was not democratically elected. He lost the popular vote by 3 million votes. He only won because of an outdated electoral college system. He is unelected just as you. No wonder you two see eye to eye.
of our most important ally. Let's just see what he would have achieved in the last week. Would he have been able to protect British citizens from the impact of the executive order? No. Would he have been able to lay the foundations of a trade deal? No. Would he have got a 100% commitment to NATO? No. That's what Labour has to offer this country. Less protection for British citizens, less prosperous. Less safe. He can lead a protest. I'm leading a country
into economic disaster.
Dans les villages, l'eau et les hommes avaient disparu. Les femmes pleuraient, tremblaient devant la sorcière.
People who want to harm and even attack our country. And with the Brexit negotiations due to begin only 11 days after polling day, he is not prepared for those negotiations. But I am prepared. Prepared to take the difficult decisions that leadership demands. Prepared to do what is necessary to protect and defend our country. Prepared to go into the negotiating chamber with the European Union just 11 days after polling day. I am prepared. I'm ready to go. Jeremy Corbyn is not.
Absolutely ridiculous. Where they've got this figure from, I have no idea. Whether they just thought, we like the number 100, we like the sound of billion, let's do it, I don't know. But this ultimately will have absolutely horrific consequences for the EU itself and for its future. The EU project's dying. It will die by 2025. That's just a fact. If they do just want to, try and eke it out up until 2025, this isn't the right way to go. This is unbelievably ridiculous. If they seriously think Britain is going to pay 100 billion to leave the European Union, then they are really, really fucking stupid. And if the British government genuinely agrees to paying to the 100 billion, or frankly, anything near that figure, it's absolutely deplorable, the figure, then I can imagine there will be a few protests on the streets. I can imagine whatever government is sitting and makes that decision will not be a particularly popular one. We owe the EU nothing. We can leave the EU right now. We didn't need to trigger Article 50. A lot of people don't understand that. We had the right to leave the European Union whenever the fuck we wanted. We didn't have to trigger Article 50. So the EU can make out that they're the ones with in a position of power, but they really are not. We have all the power. We can leave tomorrow if we want to. We can leave with no deal. Hell, they want to play dirty, we can play dirty too. Now, their announcement in the news today that we've got to pay £100 billion, they have only helped Eurosceptics. This only proves the EU is a dictatorship, an undemocratic one at that it's a failed project, and that it knows it's failing because it is doing everything in its conceivable power to make it almost impossible for countries to leave the Union. It's done this before. It has history. But this will backfire, because when other countries see how difficult the EU is making it for Britain to exercise their democratic decision to leave the European Union, other countries and the people will be sitting at home watching the news